Hi everyone, Michelle here with you today to talk to you about one of my favorite newish topics in nutrition, the microbiome. And you may have heard of the microbiome, you may not have, but today is just going to be the 101. So really in many ways, the best way to define the microbiome is to begin with the simple question, what are we? And many of you probably answer human to this question, and you're partially correct. But would you believe that, in fact, only 10% of our cells in our body are human? It's kind of cool. Research has determined that we share our life with around 100 trillion organisms, which comprise something called our microbiome. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So that means for every one of our cells, there are 10 microbial cells living either on the inside of our body or on the outside. And these things help us perform life-sustaining functions that we couldn't perform without their help. And we'll get into all these details today. And actually, that just leads right into the next slide, what we're going to cover today. We'll go into more detail on what a microbiome is. We'll talk about different areas that you might have, that you definitely have, not might. You have a microbiome in the nose, mouth, skin, and then urinary tract. And the one I have underlined there, which really relates to our course here, is the one in the gut. And we'll talk about what the things we can do to control that are, how the microbiome in the gut controls other things about us, which we'll get into more detail about. But it's just a fun fact that researchers are now determining that our microbiome determines how things are played out in our bodies and lives more than genes. So as far as like health risk, like diabetes or heart disease or osteoarthritis, a lot of that stuff can be determined through the gut flora that you have or don't have, and also can be controlled by supplementing that gut flora. So like I said, we'll get into detail on that. And we'll learn more about how, sorry, let me go back one. We'll learn more about how we can figure out what's in our own microbiome. And there are tests out there to do that. So that's pretty cool. All right, so what exactly is a microbiome? The word microbiome is defined as the collection of, I'm just gonna go ahead and pop these up there. The collection of microbes or microorganisms that inhabit an environment, creating sort of like a mini ecosystem. So our human microbiome is made up of communities of symbiotic bacteria and pathogens, along with fungi and viruses, and all of those things call our bodies home. Okay, these communities exist in unique complementary blends and inhabit anything from our skin and genitals to our mouths and eyes, and of course our intestines, which is what we're really interested in for this nutrition course. The clusters of bacteria from different regions of the body are variously known as microbiota. For example, your skin microbiota or oral microbiota, gut microbiota, which is also known as gut flora. Okay, some of these guys are simply along for a free ride. And others, the symbiotic bacteria, you'll hear us mention, offer a mutually beneficial relationship. Okay, so these are always lurking, although in much smaller numbers. These are always lurking, and then in much smaller numbers, there's pathogens, which are disease-causing opportunistic microbiomes. So there's a few different kinds. What we've got going on here. So this is pop some definitions up there, so that while I'm kind of talking a little bit more about what is the microbiome, you can have some more definitions up there to know what I'm saying. So what's cool is what scientists have recently come to understand is that the makeup and overall health of your microbiome as a whole determines whether pathogens in the gut coexist peacefully or cause disease. Okay, so that means, having certain numbers of good bacteria and not having the bad ones, or the right ratio, or whatever it is. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in this presentation a little bit further on. Okay, so all these bacteria make up an essential piece of our biological puzzle. And it's been constructed through millions of years of natural selection and even through our entire lifetimes. And it's it's kind of only now we're starting to scratch the surface with that. There's some really cool research out there. There's actually a guy here in San Diego at UCSD, and he is involved with the Human and American Microbiome Gut Project. And they actually are taking samples of people's gut microbiome and having them answer survey questions about their lifestyle and diet and health risks. And they're piecing a lot of really cool information together. And that's actually been going on for a few years now. And they should be continuing to produce results on that, with every year for probably the next 10 years. They're going to be following these people around for a long time. So it'd be really cool to see what we can learn from this and how that will change our approach to our daily lives and also to treating illness or preventing illness and the things that we can control with that. So just little support slides if you want to geek out on microbes, the different types of microbes in the human body here. And these are just some examples. We'll actually have a little bit more detail about some of these, mostly the bacteria and the fungi over here. But like I mentioned in the first slide, what we're going to talk about, there are different areas that we're going to focus on today as the hot spots for microbial life. So some are native to the body, and some microbes are introduced to the body, and they can be introduced in many ways. Contact with another person, something you ate, something that you've touched. Open sores and microbes getting into your bloodstream can be very dangerous. Healthy microbes can be introduced to the body in the same ways. Let's talk about the 5 regions we mentioned. So the nose was number 1, and it's a primary defender against inhaled pathogens. And that's what all those little hairs and the mucus and everything in there, and the purpose is to trap those microbes so they don't make it further into the body, into the lungs, causing possible potential disease or illness. Inflammation from viral infections and allergic reactions. So I'm going to highlight the things in red that could negatively affect your microbiome. That kind of inflammation can both be caused by these pathogens, but it also it opens up opportunities for more pathogens to come in because there could be broken skin or whatever it is. And then also inhaled and oral antibiotics, although, they do help you immediately relieve the symptoms, they are actually wiping out not only the bad bacteria, but also the good bacteria. So just keep that in mind as you're going through your life and maybe thinking about some alternatives. And I can share some ideas with you. I actually wrote a blog post about a year or so ago called the Nasal Relief Trifecta. And it talks about like 3 things that you can do to help with allergies or congestion that don't involve medicine. And actually that was the third post in kind of a series where I had talked about, why are over-the-counter medications dangerous? And this stuff wasn't even on the list yet. This was just a couple of years ago, and it wasn't even on my radar, at least, that, of course, yes, antibiotics, but some other drugs that they might also influence the microbiome. So there's a couple articles I'll link about, treatment alternatives to medications and also why medications are dangerous other than the microbiome, disrupting that. All right, moving on. I'm going to take a sip as we go to the mouth. That's not my mouth, by the way. This is one I found online. Looks like it's having a good time. So, okay, the mouth is kind of a little breakdown. Of course, you're going to get a ton of microbes that regularly enter the oral cavity. This is why it's super important that we wash our hands, after going to the bathroom or touching money or, any of those high risk areas for dangerous microbes. if you've been hiking and you touch like a, fall by the trail and there's, animal feces, or you've gone to the bathroom, you're about to cook, whatever it is, this is the prime time for microbes to be transferred into our oral cavity, okay? Normally, the saliva, the pH of your mouth, temperature, and your immune system being super strong and healthy prevent many of these species from surviving and making it into your gut. Of course, brushing and flossing clears up some of this built up stuff too, or prevents any of those particles from going any further. And a lot of times we'll use oral antibiotics. That's going to definitely inhibit the growth of any issues, but again, it's a balance, and it's gonna wipe out all the other bacteria too. So not so scary, but just to be aware, if you are in a position where you're using some of these antibiotics, we can talk about how to fix the aftermath in a little bit here, because you will need to replace those good bacteria to remain healthy. So it's the symbiosis again, right? These oral microbes are able to survive in these conditions because of just the elaborate relationship that they have. And, they actually, the good bacteria are going to form this layer, this buildup, that's going to coat or create a barrier for incoming bacteria, the dangerous bacteria. So it's pretty cool. We don't want to disrupt that. So you might consider which products you're using and if they're going to support this process. And I actually found a cool toothpaste that I've been using. Actually grab it. Should have had it right in front of me because I don't remember the name, and I'll link this in the article as well. Uncle Harry's Natural Products Alkalizing Toothpaste. It is actually, I'm not going to lie, it was a little bit rough the first, I'd say, week that I used it, because it's an all-natural product, and the ingredients are this clay, calcium carbonate, silver water, sea salt, minerals, mustard seed, and then essential oils of peppermint, eucalyptus, clove, wintergreen, and oregano. So it's all very strong flavors. I mean, obviously the clay is probably pretty mild, but it's a great tooth whitening. It has all natural flavors. It uses essential oils, and it does leave your mouth feeling fresh afterwards. It's just during the brushing, I found that I can't actually close my mouth around my toothbrush, so expect a lot of spray, or like go outside or something. Sometimes I'll stay on the back porch and do it because it's so salty. It's the salt that it makes it really hard to kind of adjust to, but I love it ever since that first week of getting over that hump. So one of the things that it does is it makes sure that it maintains that pH balance in your mouth, and that way it's not wiping out your good germs as some other toothpaste might do, like the stronger commercial brands with chemicals or alcohol or whatever it is. Just something to consider, and I can pass you on information about that as well. All right, the skin is the next one here. It's the largest organ of the body. Fun fact there for you guys. All right, as we know, we all have different skin types, right? Oily, dry, moist, and some microbes prefer one over the other. So depending on your skin type, you might be more prone to certain not diseases, but certain symptoms or issues or whatever it is. It could be diseases. Maybe you're more prone to the ringworm fungus, which we'll see here in a minute. So these microbes, they're all over, but they especially like to hide in crevices, and they do this. They recolonize after washing with soap. So the ones kind of on the surface, they probably get washed off, but these ones that are hiding, they recolonize after. But also remember that there is a period where you've washed them off. That goes for the good and the bad bacteria again, right? So you also washed off the good ones, and you had to wait for those to recolonize, all right? Of course, the skin has natural defenses. The sweat is slightly acidic and has these peptides that are antimicrobial. But antibiotic washes and, of course, oral antibiotics disturb normal balance of the microbes on the skin. So all that, the soap with the antimicrobial soap or the hand sanitizers everywhere, it's still kind of in question, but trying to figure out the balance with using those. Should we use them at all? If so, when and how much? And is it affecting our long-term health by causing superbugs? And we'll get into that a little bit more here in just a minute. So just as any of the other parts, there is a normal balance of microbes on our skin, and they protect introduced microbes from harming us. Okay, so obviously damaged skin is going to give opportunities for these guys to invade the bloodstream and cause serious illness. And my example here is MRSA. Why we focus so much on cleaning up after we use equipment in the gym. If you are into jiu-jitsu or any other kind of sport where you're rolling around on a mat, just stressing the importance in your facility of everyone cleaning up after this. It's a very, very serious situation. And this isn't the only one that can be very dangerous, but it is a fairly common one, or well-known or heard of one. And you know, we actually, one of our coaches actually just lost a friend recently this past weekend, who thought he had just strained his neck doing jiu-jitsu, and it turned out he had MRSA from the mat, and he went to the hospital, you know, a couple days after. He figured out, you know, that was a strained neck. A couple days later, it still wasn't better. In fact, it was getting worse. Went to the hospital, and he actually passed away later that night. So it can be very serious. So we, you know, just always making sure to clean up after yourselves, versus having to like sanitize your own skin. It shouldn't even get to that point. Okay, and if everything's healthy and clean around you and your surroundings, or you're at least paying attention to the times that it's not, and you're washing up in those times, we can actually prevent a lot of situations as well. So. All right, enough on that story. We'll try to, sorry, here's something else icky. The ringworm I promised you, right? So this is just an example, probably because this person has a certain skin type, they are at a higher risk for developing this type of fungi developing, okay? And this is, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce the name of those fungi, but they are the ones that cause the ringworm infection. So this is someone that's out of balance in their microbiome, and this fungi has taken over because there's not enough of the other one to get rid of it, or because it found the right conditions here. And this is one that you get from contact with other people who have it. So this person touched someone else who had ringworm, or an animal that had ringworm, and it was transmitted in that way. So it's not actually a worm as the name makes it sound, it's a fungus. All right, here's one we're really interested in, and that is the gut. So I'm gonna do some more of my green and red here. So major barriers for microbes entering the gut, meaning the ones that we don't want to be there, like major barriers are good because they're the ones that are keeping the microbes out, is a low pH. And we actually haven't talked much about this. I know it's come up in a couple of the lessons as far as eating in a way that keeps your pH at the right level, which is, you know, lower than most people's, or avoiding acidic foods, and not meaning like eating a tomato, not eating a tomato because it's acidic, meaning how it reacts in your body, and as far as how it affects the acidity level of your body. And we typically want to eat foods that are lower in pH. This helps maintain the lower pH of our gut and our bodies, and prevents microbes from being able to survive there. Okay. Obviously, the saliva, the mouth is one of the first defenses. It is the first defense. So the saliva from the mouth is going to hopefully kill a lot of stuff before it even makes it to the gut. Bile, if it does make it down to the stomach, again, that's your second line of defense before it goes into the gut. And if you need a refresher, go back to our digestion lesson. But so you can see my arrow coming down, the bile in here. All right, and then also your immune system in general, which is, as we know, regulated through the gut, right? A healthy gut means a healthy immune system. An unhealthy gut is a leaky gut. Literally, if you remember, literally meaning that particles of food and pathogens are leaking through the intestinal walls and they're causing illness in the body. And that could present as anything from arthritis to some weird rashes or all kinds of different stuff. Runny nose, that even ulcers, which we'll learn here in a little bit. Okay, so and then besides that, if the intestinal wall is healthy, there's really not a lot of area for these guys to attach because all the good bacteria are already there. There's no weird little gross crevices. It's all smooth and the lining is healthy. And so that is a deterrent, right? And these things have a hard time surviving in a widely varied diet, okay? So we're introducing naturally good pathogens for us by the things that we eat. And we're also introducing not so good pathogens for us by the things we eat. So just following our food rules, all the things that we've learned so far, just basically eating real food. And actually we talked a little bit about the order of the real food. Remember, we're trying to eat our vegetables or leafy greens first, and they're basically providing a float or a slide for like the heavier stuff like meats and fats to move through on. Versus if we eat the meats and heavy fats and stuff first, they take longer to digest, right? So they're going to stop in the intestine while all this carbohydrate that doesn't take as long to digest sits back there and digests back behind it and gets blocked. And that's when you start getting gas and that kind of stuff. So that was just, sorry, I detracted a little bit there. So going back just to the wide variety diet. For those that do manage to colonize the gut, the gut flora they're there to perform regular tasks of digestion and vitamin production and many others, which includes sometimes fighting off these other guys, right? And just an interesting thing to note that there can be gene transfer between these species in the gut. And so if we're introducing these outside species and they get into our gut, they can create these drug-resistant superbugs. And that's kind of one of the concerns and areas of more research about the overuse of antibiotics and this type of stuff. A little more on the gut. So here's what I was talking about earlier, just with carbohydrates. And this is not necessarily if it gets stuck behind some meat or protein, like I said in the last example, but this is if the gut balance is not quite right, and the healthy bacteria, there are too many of this particular unhealthy bacteria in the gut. Okay, so this bacteria here is what's going to ferment simple carbohydrates in the gut and release hydrogen and carbon dioxide. Okay, that's what happens there. Here's our CO2 and H2. And if we have too much of this methano bacteria here, it consumes the hydrogen gas and it produces methane. So that's what we're feeling is because there are actually too many of this orange bacteria in the gut, and it's feasting on the byproduct, the not so stinky and painful byproduct this other guy has created. And because of that, we're getting gas, right? So that's just one example. So what you could do in this instance would be there'd be two things. Figure out what it is that you're eating that's giving you too much of the bad bacteria and cut back on that. Or two, figure out which of the good bacteria that you're lacking if that's the case, and supplement probiotics with those, or eat foods that have that type of bacteria. And I'll tell you how you can get that test here in a minute, okay? All right, moving on. So good and bad gut bacteria, another example. This bacteria can be found in significantly high numbers in the gut flora, and its job is to break down cellulose in the gut, and to help with digestion. Okay, so it's breaking down parts of the plant that we're eating. However, here's a bad bacteria guy. I call this the helicopter bacteria. It kind of looks like one, and it says that. So this one hangs out in the stomach and upper GI tract, and it's known for causing ulcers. So it's kind of interesting. This is where one of the examples I was talking about how maybe it kind of determines or plays out how we're going to feel as far as sickness or wellness instead of genes. So this person didn't necessarily have the gene for getting an ulcer, or maybe they didn't get it from drinking Pepsi every day for 50 years. It's because they had this certain bacteria. Isn't that interesting? What does that mean? I mean, there's a lot of possibility for prevention and treatment just based on that knowledge. So that's pretty cool. And you may be wondering, oh, what if that person's dad and grandpa both had this problem? Well, the microbiome and bacteria from it can be passed on in family members. So that wouldn't be surprising. Kind of like genes, they're passed along. All right, I just want to touch on the urinary tract really quick because it was on the list. The urinary tract system should be super sterile, and that's as we eliminate urine, there's a lot of stuff in there that's going to keep the microbes out. So not only are we flushing this tract with the urine, so everything's coming out and washing it out, there are chemicals in there that kill microbiomes. Things that we do to alter this. One example is introduce, like if you had to have a catheter after surgery or something like that, that is a high risk procedure as far as causing infection, because you're introducing germs into an area that would not really have those introduced, and for a reason, okay? Because it's connecting to the bladder, the kidneys, some very delicate areas around there. All right, so we're gonna move on. How the microbiome can benefit us. So we talked about this. The communities in our microbiome carry out a variety of functions which are vital to not only our health and well-being, but our very survival. Number one here is the immune system. Starting with our immune system, our microbiome establishes the parameters in which our body judges whether or not something is friend or foe. It maintains harmony, balance, and order amongst its own communities, ensuring that opportunistic pathogens are kept to a minimum, while also keeping the host system from attacking itself. It is our first, second, and third line of defense, starting with our skin, then our mucous membranes, and finally our gut, providing a living barrier that is able to be modified and transformed to suit individual needs and unique environments. Pretty cool. Absorption of nutrients. Number two here. And our gut microbiota is fundamental to the breakdown and absorption of nutrients. Without it, the majority of our food intake would not only be indigestible, but we would not be capable of extracting the critical nutritional compounds needed to function. Our symbiotic cohorts not only provide this service, but also secrete beneficial chemicals as a natural part of their metabolic cycle. And then number three, I've touched on this a few times, plays a greater role than genes in determining risk factors, allergies, etc. And we'll actually dive into this one a little bit more. when we talk about testing. So let's talk about manipulating it now. We know how it can benefit us and what we can learn from it, but how can we manipulate it, or what manipulates it, or how does it manipulate us even? So like I said, we're a product of our environment. Right? We talked about the different ways maybe you can pick this up. We'll get into some details here. But basically, in the beginning, as infants, and as we infants and our guts come into this world with a blank slate, awaiting our first contact with microscopic organisms that surround us. Our first exposure is via the birth canal. Okay, so, and then that's followed directly by gut nurturing concoction of mother's milk. And that's nature's way of establishing the foundation on which we build our microbiome. So you may hear a lot of, talk out there about whether you should breastfeed or bottle feed, and this is one of the reason proponents of breastfeeding give, if that's all possible for the mother to do. So this is a familial way of establishing our foundational microbiomes, and familial dietary and environmental exposure throughout our developing years cultivates an ecosystem which will play a starring role in the determination of our health for a lifetime. So that's why the dad and the brother and the uncle could all have the same ulcer situation, and it might seem like it's a gene, but actually it could be this microbiome. So did you know anytime you kiss someone, pet an animal, eat a meal, or apply a cosmetic, you are affecting the composition of your microbiome. Okay? Pretty much everything we do all day long is affecting that. Killing the germs. This one's in red. So we talked about this. Antibiotics and an obsession to sterilize our environments have resulted in a significant rise in gut-related illness and pressure on the medical community to finally explore this long ignored aspect of human biology. And I can't wait to see what they come up with. We have therapeutic treatments, and we mentioned a couple of these, but haven't got into too many details. But research has uncovered an intricate web connecting our gut flora to virtually every process in our body, okay, like I said. So as such, imbalances in our microbial communities have been implicated in countless health issues, including immune health, psychological well-being, and some of the deepest chronic health issues of our times. Research surrounding one such connection this one article coined the gut-brain axis. Okay? It says it has the potential to revolutionize the way psychologists worldwide support mental and emotional well-being, based on this study in this article. It's pretty cool. Other therapeutic treatments, trading bacteria is one, or receiving a transplant. And that is there's techniques and methods like that on how to manipulate one's own microbiome. And they're starting to kind of flood the medical literature. So trading gut bacteria has become the latest focus for therapeutic treatments, being successfully utilized as a means to treat antibiotic-resistant infections, and going so far as to be considered as potential means for treating obesity. And another, like a super easy one, is supplementing bacteria, either through eating more of the foods that have the bacteria that you're looking for, or adding in probiotics, something as simple as probiotics. And studies on the human microbiome have hailed probiotics and bacteria as kind of like the new antibiotic, and to be treating illness and infections with these instead of antibiotics. So a little bit more interplay, just so you guys can see what goes on when the antibiotics come in. They kill infectious bacteria, of course, but also disrupt natural flora. And this, for example, can result in a yeast infection, digestive problems, etc. So if you do have to go on a round of antibiotics, you should definitely go on a round of probiotics after that. to help replace all these problems. You might notice, like when you're on antibiotics, if you think back to our poop talk, you have that toxic, terrible, disgusting poo, and it smells horrible, right? That's antibiotic poop. Chemotherapy, drugs, things like that, when they go into the gut, the gut flora can actually modify, depending on what you have, modifies the drugs as they're metabolized, and this is what can cause the side effects. So that's just kind of an interesting thing to know. So there's a lot of interplay and a lot more research to still be done on this. So like I said, this is the 101 lesson, and there's actually a lot more to learn now, but there's so much more that we don't know than we currently know, and we will know all of that within the next few years, and that's really awesome. A little more on antimicrobial products. How many do we really need? Do we need all of these? Look how some of those things on there you don't think about. Toothpaste, the Kleenex. You know, it's kind of one of those marketing things. You're like, oh, we'll make these antimicrobial Kleenexes, but really it's not helping us, it's hurting us. So these products kill germs to reduce infection. But what about our natural germs, right? We want our natural flora. And this is the question, will this allow superbugs to be problems for the future? And that's where a lot of research is going right now. And you may be wondering, do we all have the same microbiome? I'm going to give you a guess. No. It varies greatly. This is my gut, that's your gut. Don't worry, I didn't secretly test your gut microbiome, just an example. But it varies, and we all likely will have, as far as the good ones, from our kind of region of the world, or should have the same types of bacteria in there, but just in different numbers and ratios. So let's talk a little about discovering your microbiome. And I referenced this gut project. I will give you a link to that and some of the studies that I used for this presentation. There's some actually really cool websites out there. You can register for this project if you want. You do pay money. It's basically like a volunteer thing where you pay to participate. They send you the kit, and you do a test. You have to fill out a survey about how you eat and your lifestyle and stuff about you, and then you do the test a couple times within a 5-year period or something, and they track your microbiome over that time, and they publish the results of what they're finding. So that's really awesome. How can you get tested? Let's say you don't want to have to do the gut project thing. Then you can look up some things in your area. We have a company here called Thorn Research that we've partnered with, and they offer options for that testing. And then there's a bunch of other companies out there. And what's cool about these companies is, so they'll give you this whole report of your microbiome. It'll look basically like a blood test report almost, or if you've ever done the DEXA scan, and it'll list all the bacteria and kind of show your levels as far as if it's in the red, yellow, or green, if it's where it should be. And some of them you want more of, and some of you want less of. So it'll indicate that and show you where you are in relation to that. So one, that gives you this knowledge specifically of which probiotics to buy if that's the route you're going to take. So when you go to the store or look online, you can actually read the label just like you would anything else, and you're going to look for ones that have those specific probiotics in them. So that's pretty cool. And then, so when I did that, I actually, and this wasn't one of the intended reasons why I did it, but I lost 3 to 5 pounds within a couple days of taking these probiotics. And I'm sure it was just bloating and stuff, just because my gut was more in balance. So that was an interesting little side effect. I had mine tested. So I also thought it was really cool. Some health things that I had suspected but had never really tested for before. were kind of shown to be true on that. And one example is that I have always had an issue with legumes, especially peanuts. And there was this one bacteria that I was low in that would cause allergic type symptoms to those foods. So that was interesting. And then what was the other one? Oh, I had around that time, I had been craving dark chocolate so bad, like all the time, all the time. Like I love chocolate and everything, but it was like a crazy amount. And there's actually a bacteria called like Chocobacillus or something. And I was low in it. And when you're low in it, you actually crave chocolate, dark chocolate specifically. So anyway, so once I started taking these probiotics, that was also addressed. And so now I don't have those crazy cravings. I'm not sure what that, I would have to do more research to see. And it gives you all this information. If you like kind of click on it, it'll open it up to that bacteria and what it specifically does in your body. So really cool tests that are out there. I'll send you some resources on that. They're all online. It doesn't have to be from your same city. For those online ones, you would just order the test kit online. They send it to you. The test, yes, you're gonna have to swab your poo. So usually just after you wipe, you take the Q-tip, long Q-tip that they give you, you wipe it on the toilet paper, and then you put it in this plastic test tube and send it off to them. You just have to drop it at like a FedEx location or whatever. And excuse me. And then within like a couple of weeks, you'll have your results emailed to you, and then you can meet with one of their consultants and talk about it. And they can, some of these places can actually formulate a special probiotic blend just for you based on your needs. If you don't do that, you can talk, if you see a naturopath, they should have connections to these places or be able to do that for you. And possibly even your doctor, depending on his or her philosophy. So there are some options. I'll give you those resources. There's still a lot of questions to answer out there. Like I said, I'm really excited about the next couple of years and figuring all this out, not just for me, but for all of humanity. But I kind of, as you know, I like to test on myself a little bit. So I'll share with you guys if I have any other findings. Here are the kind of the big questions. Are we making germs more resistant? And what happens when they're resistant to all the drugs in our arsenal? We mentioned our gut can modify drugs. And how can we minimize these side effects because of that? And why does mine look different than yours? And how does it affect things like obesity, food allergies, and the ability to fight disease? So what do you want to know? I had a bunch of my questions. I'll share more of my results on the Facebook group. If you have any findings or have more questions, do not hesitate to also post there. And I thank you for joining me today. I believe this is my last session with you, so maybe I'll hop in on one of the final sessions just to say goodbye, like the wrap-up session. But otherwise, it's been great working with all of you. Please keep in contact. We'll keep that group open, and I'm sure I'll hear from you all eventually, hopefully with great news of all your successes. All right, best wishes, everyone. Bye.